So back in 2012, when I was just done with my first year of college, I came back to New York to visit a friend of mine who I was really close with. And they were having a school dance, and I have really bad social anxiety. So I it was getting late, and instead of waiting right outside the school because I really didn't want to run into anyone else, I waited at the corner of where my school was. Four cops come up to me immediately, put their hands on me, but all start patting me down. I think three of them were patting me down. One of them was asking a bunch of questions. They didn't ask me anything until after they put their hands on me. And they kept asking me like, "What are you doing here? What are you coming to see someone? Blah blah blah. Do you live around here?" Well, all these questions, just rapid fire questions, and I was so nervous, I couldn't even answer. But I was stammering. I couldn't say. I couldn't even think straight. Um, and I had I had nothing on me. I had nothing. I wasn't doing anything that I wasn't supposed to be doing. I was just visiting a friend when I was home from college. Um, they didn't find anything, obviously, so they let me go. And I remember one of the cops, I think it was the one asking all the questions. He asked me, "So what are you gonna do now?" Um, after they let me go, and I was like, I was so angry and upset and embarrassed. Um, and I was just like, I'm gonna go home. I felt I was too scared to even see my friend. Um, so yeah, that's my experience with police. I've had other experiences with them. This is an important time where I feel like America really has to do some soul searching because it's always been racist. I mean, it's America's like basically founded on a rich racist history. Um, and I'm not just talking about slavery. I'm talking about racism against Italians, racism against Asian people, and racism against Muslims and Hispanics and blacks as well. It doesn't take much for America to fall back into racist tendencies. I've been jumped before coming out of high school and middle school where a school around the block doesn't like the way we look, doesn't like what we're wearing. I went to a private school, so we wore like uniforms and stuff, and they sought us out immediately, um, and would just you know ask for our stuff. I say ask like they said it politely. Um, they would attack us. They would hit us and stuff. And me getting stopped by the cops that day felt the same way. I felt the same level of embarrassment, the same level of anger and frustration. Except after I got jumped, I would go to the cops. Of course, they didn't really even do anything. But after I got stopped by the cops, who do I go to? Um, and I was a grown ass man by that point. There needs to be some level of systemic change that comes with this, and I feel like a lot of people don't understand or don't want to understand. But systemic racism is not saying that every single cop in the country is racist. That's not what it means. It means that somewhere down the line, whether it's in the training, whether it's in the hiring process, something, um, cops and other people of authority are taught to um, profile and to disproportionately um, target one demographic over another, um, and that's what it means. And of course, if you disproportionately target one demographic, you're going to make more arrests with that demographic because it's just how it turns out. Um, and disproportionately, blacks and Hispanics have been a target of stops and frisks or marijuana charges or things like that. I'm hoping that with all this anger and all this passion, we can get some real systemic change, and it criminal justice reform is obviously the biggest one. All these people who are in jail on nonviolent drug charges that other people have gotten away with, just because of the color of their skin or how much money they happen to have in their pocket, et cetera, et cetera. Those people should be released. Obviously, we need some kind of rules to govern the police. And I don't have facts right in front of me, so I'm not going to throw out any suggestions. I'm not an authority on this at all. I just want to tell my story, just as an idea of how it can feel sometimes. Is you walk into a store and then you decide you don't want anything, and for a normal person, they just leave, right? But I've many times in my life, I've walked into a store and thought, I have to buy something. I have to buy something because if I just leave, it'll look suspicious. And think about that. Why would it look suspicious? I just decided I didn't want anything, so I'm leaving. I didn't steal anything. I've never stolen anything from a store before. So why would it seem suspicious if I just leave? And it's because I've been conditioned by the years of me being alive and being the color that I am, and being seeing everything that's been happening. I've been conditioned to think that, hey, whether or not you've done anything, you were going to look suspicious. And that's sort of the thing with this systemic problem, is that you're taught as a black person, as a minority, as a poor person too. I really do believe like cops are awful to poor people as well. You're taught that you're guilty until proven innocent, and it's a real problem. And I think how cops perceive civilians, and also how society perceives certain groups of people, and that's obviously a problem that can only really change over time. There's no law we can make to tell everyone to stop perceiving people one way or another. And I think there has been great evolution in a positive direction over time, but still a long way to go. I mean, look how easy it is for Americans to not care about senseless, mindless bombing of brown people in the Middle East. It's so easy for us to just not care. And it's so easy for politicians and people to justify senseless, mindless bombing of people, civilians in the Middle East, because we're not there and it's not us. And I think it's just an American thing. I do feel like it's every country has its own race problem. And maybe it's something that the whole world needs to figure out. I don't know. When Ethan said in his video, black people have this conversation about cops. Definitely, I've had that conversation. I know many of my friends who have had that conversation, and it's usually, in my experience, black boys, because we're more likely to be perceived as black boys are more likely to be perceived as thugs, or as gang affiliated, or as a larger threat than they are. I remember hearing this one thing about how cops are more likely to, or people in general are more likely to assume, it was like a psychological study, they're more likely to assume that a black person is older than they actually are, a black kid is older than they actually are. That, I mean, if you're a cop and you're going to take it down a suspect, a kid, and you assume that they're 13 when they're actually 10 or 9, you're going to treat them differently, and it's just how it is. So it's confronting those preconceived notions about people and things, and finding a way to address them in a positive way. I don't know. I don't have the answers. But anyway, it is sort of like a birds and the bees talk, but it's about cops, and it's basically, hey, don't ever talk back to a police officer. You say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You tell them, give them the straight dope, don't give them the straight dope. Don't do that. You give them the straight facts, and you tell them, and you don't do anything that might get you hurt. Because, and I've had this conversation years ago, years before Trayvon Martin even. So, and it's a conversation even in my adulthood that keeps coming up. And it sucks. It really sucks. It's so bad. It's crazy. And honestly, it's something that I didn't even think about. Like, I just, yeah, you fucking say yes, sir, yes, ma'am to the cops and blah, blah, blah. I didn't think that other people in the world aren't having this conversation until I got older. And then I was like, oh, yeah, this isn't normal. This isn't right at all. I can't walk down the street and see a cop and not feel instantly nervous. And even when I'm not doing anything wrong. And even if I were, like, many people, especially young people, they do shit. Ethan in his video talked about how he had weed on him. And, you know, people smoke, people drink in public, people do all kinds of shit that they can get arrested for or they can get ticketed for. And just even on days when I'm just walking down the street, not hurting anyone, not doing anything wrong, I still feel nervous when I see a cop around. I get nervous. I remember I was walking down I was in Times Square. I was at Times Square, and there was this guy keeling over. He was clearly drunk, and he looked like he was having trouble. And I saw some cops across the street. And I actually had to second guess whether I should tell them about this guy or not, because I was like, hey, he looks like he might hurt himself if no one's paying attention to him. So I should tell someone just so that they know, hey, this guy, he might have something wrong. May just keep an eye on him. And I actually had to second guess whether I should go talk to the cops or not, because I was like, I don't want them to think I'm doing something wrong, and I don't want this to escalate into some kind of situation when I really haven't done anything. I just want to look out for this one guy that I see across the street keeling over. It's very real. And it's very pertinent these days. And so I'm going to end off with this story that nothing really happened, thankfully. But I was working a summer at a summer camp, met a lot of good friends there. And one friend was having a party up in Riverdale, which is North New York. North New York City, I should say. And I bought some beer, and I got in an Uber because it was deep, and I didn't trust the train system to get me there in a timely or organized fashion. Though it probably, now that I think about it, because I've been there a few times afterward, and it probably would have been easier to just take the train or take the bus. But especially considering what happened, I took an Uber, and the address, I had the right address, but I put in the wrong zip code. And so the Uber dropped me off at the completely wrong spot. It's some random ass intersection. This was like 8 or 9 at night. And me being a dumbass, I decided, hey, it can't be that far away. I'm just going to walk it. And oh boy, was that a walk. It was like a 45 minute, maybe hour long walk up to Riverdale, up to this guy's house. And me trying to get there in as timely a manner as possible, I decided to, cut through some neighborhoods and to get there as fast as possible. It was that area is very hilly and very freeway-y. So I wanted to get there as quick as possible, and I got severely scared. I think this is a year or two after Trayvon Martin. Maybe it was the same year. I can't remember, but I got severely terrified to the point where I was shaking, looking over my shoulder. I was worried that some neighborhood watch or some cop or something would see me cutting through these neighborhoods, or would see me walking around. And you're always in New York, you're always worried you're going to get mugged or something, right? That should be the biggest fear. But I was afraid of someone with some level of authority coming and seeing me and being like, hey, what are you doing? And before I can explain myself, either locking me up or doing something worse to me. My girlfriend at the time, we hadn't even really been together long at all. And she lived in California. So we had only met physically a couple times. And we hadn't been together very long at all. I want to say maybe a few weeks, a month at most. And I was so absolutely terrified that I kept texting her and calling her just so I could have someone to talk to while I was walking to this party. And it was I thought about turning back. I thought about not going to the party. I thought about all the worst possible outcomes that could possibly happen. And thankfully none of them did, and I made it to the party. My girlfriend at the time, she wasn't able to answer me when I was calling and texting her because and she was white. I feel like that is pertinent, but she couldn't answer me at the time because she was out with her family for dinner. And I was just alone and scared and terrified, nervous, shaking with this 6-pack of beer in my hands, just walking up to this party. And I was beside myself. I think I was listening to music or something, and I took my earphones out just so I could hear if anyone was coming up to me. And I made it. In the end, I made it. And then she answered me, and I told her, what happened. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry you felt that way. And I had a beer, and I calmed down, and I took an Uber all the way back home. Actually, I think I was driven home by my friend. Yeah, it was awful. It was terrifying, and I never want to feel that way again. I go for walks a lot. I really like walking. I like being out in nature. I like being alone to myself in the city. I mean, I don't like being alone, but I do like when I'm on walks and just kind of with my thoughts when it's dark out in the city. I really like that. And no one should have to feel scared for their life when they're out on a walk, even if it's dark out, especially when they're not scared of getting robbed, but they're more scared of a cop. It just reminded me of another story. I was in Central Park, and to be fair, it was after hours and I shouldn't have been in Central Park, but there was a cop there, and he saw me. He said, you shouldn't be here. Thankfully, he was a decent guy, and he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't escalate. He didn't follow me around. He just told me I got to get out, and I said yeah, but I was so scared, and I think I put my hands up. I can't remember what I did. I think I did something with my hands, just to let him know, hey, I'm not, nothing's wrong here. He didn't put his hand on his gun or anything like that. I just said, hey, the exit's behind you. Can I go that way? And he said, yeah. And he let me go and blah, blah, blah. And that was that. But I was scared. I was nervous. And no one should have to feel that way when they see a cop. It's just that's the opposite of the feeling they're supposed to invoke. Um, I don't have any answers. I don't have any suggestions. I have theories, but this isn't really the kind of video for theories. I've probably already said a few theories, but I'm going to leave it off of there. Yeah, this isn't the video I've been working on for the last few weeks. I'm working on a layer video, and it's not almost done, but it's getting there. Again, I felt like shit. I don't even know if I've said that, but I felt like shit recently. Not because of this whole thing, although that's added to it, but I just am generally depressed. So I felt like shit for that reason. And, it's easy to feel really alone when everyone's locked away in their houses, which is why Death Stranding is such a great game. But I have the layer video that I'm working on. I've just been working on so many fucking projects that it's hard for me to focus on one specific one, especially for YouTube, which always feels like there's a bit of a time limit with it. But yeah, I'm working on stuff. These Real Talk videos, I wanted to do a different Real Talk video about how shitty I've been feeling. But that'll have to come at a later time. And yeah, I felt like this was really important. I thank Ethan for making his video. And I want to say, if you're not black, if you're not Hispanic, if you're not, if you're white, don't feel guilty. Don't feel like it's your job to protect, minorities. I don't know. My opinions they differ from a lot of other minorities' opinions on this. But I feel like just being a decent person is enough. And part of being a decent person is, maybe it's just because I come from New York, where there's so many good Samaritans, and everyone's sort of looking out for each other in their own way. But I feel like part of being a decent person is, hey, when you see something shitty, you call it out. You do something. I have social anxiety, so I have a hard time doing that. But yeah, if you see someone being overtly racist or whatever, if you see a cop being an asshole, you can stand up for that person. But just in general, I don't think you have to put on the armor and the suit of armor and go out, to the front lines and do shit. I think, just be a decent person. Treat people like people. That's all everyone wants. They just want to be treated like a person. Not like a target. Not like a suspect. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one. Take care. Stay safe. See you on the next video.